Blackmagic have announced the new ATEM Mini Extreme, and the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO packed full of features. So in this video, we're going to go through them all. Before we get into the new ATEM models, let's talk about the update that Blackmagic did give for us existing ATEM Mini Pro and ATEM Mini Pro ISO users, and they did that in the form of a free software update. If you haven't already, go over to the Blackmagic website and download the version 8.6 of the Blackmagic software for the ATEM Minis, and it's going to give you one main new feature, and it's really nice. Basically, Blackmagic saw that a lot of people were taking their ATEM Minis out on location and trying to stream while they're out in the field, and sometimes you can't get a hardwired Ethernet connection, or it's just not good enough. So they've enabled mobile tethering, and it allows you to connect via a cable from your mobile device, and those can be Android devices or Apple iPhones. And I've also tried this with an Apple iPad as well, with a 4G SIM card in, and it works. And basically, you connect your phone up via a cable to the USB-C port on the back of your ATEM Mini Pro or ISO model, and it will enable you to use your phone's data as a way of streaming and live streaming out from your device. And it is really easy to use, super simple. I'm going to be creating a video all about this feature and showing you how to set it up and how to use it. So if you're not already subscribed to this channel, hit the subscribe button now, turn on the notification bell, and watch out for that one. But enough about that. I know what you're all really here for. So let's talk about those brand new Blackmagic ATEM Mini Extreme and ATEM Mini Extreme ISO models. So firstly, new design, much bigger, more inputs. I'll explain exactly how many in just a second. A lot more controls and buttons on the front as well, and a hell of a lot more features built in. So firstly, let's talk about the connections. So the things that are the same are the things like the 12 volt DC power input on the back. Still no on and off switch. I know a lot of people did want that. One thing you'll also notice if you look around the exterior of the device, there is a lot of cooling inlets, and Grant did actually mention that they wanted to create or keep the device silent because they know a lot of people use their ATEM Minis right next to where their cameras are. So they're obviously given a lot of thought to cooling. So it'll be very interesting to see how cool this unit does keep. You have a gigabit Ethernet, and one really interesting statement that was made by Grant when he mentioned the gigabit Ethernet. He said this:
there's gigabit Ethernet built in. We're going to be able to use it for a few things in the future as well.
Now, when he said that, I was like, I wonder what this could be. And there's been some people online sort of predicting, could we be getting something like NDI to the ATEM Mini? Personally, one thing that I would love to see is the ability to add a browser source for graphics. So in the same way in something like OBS, you can add browser sources and bring in graphics with alpha channels already. I'd love to see that come to the ATEM Mini. That's just a personal preference. Blackmagic, if you're watching, take a note down. If we take a look at some of the new connections on the back, we now have 2 USB connections on there, which I know everyone was crying out for. They've done it, which is great. It means that you can now record and plug in the ATEM Mini to your computer and use it as a webcam input at the same time. The other thing with the new announcement with tethering, you can also record to an SSD and stream via your mobile data at the same time as well. So there's a lot of ways that you can use those 2 USB-C ports on the back. Let's talk about inputs then. We've doubled. We've gone from 4 HDMI inputs up to 8 HDMI inputs, a massive amount of inputs now that you can work from, and they all accept up to 1080p 60 frames per second, and they've all got the standards conversion on them as well, so you can mix and match resolutions and frame rates, and the ATEM Mini Extreme just takes care of everything. If we look at the HDMI outputs, again, lots of people were calling for this. 2 individual HDMI outputs now, and they actually act like aux outputs so that you can control what goes on each one, and we'll talk a little bit about that more in detail in the video, because they can be controlled in the software, but also HDMI input number 1 has a little, it's kind of like a switcher in a switcher. You can control it with the front buttons on the ATEM Mini Extreme itself. Just to finish off what's on the back then, we've still got the 2 mic inputs in the form of stereo mini jacks, but you'll notice again, a big cry for this one, and they've answered it. A headphone jack as well, and it's not just a headphone monitoring jack so that you can monitor the program output. It actually has a completely separate monitoring bus, so you can send certain outputs and solo things to that bus so that you can just listen to what you want to listen to, separate from what is going out to on the program mix. So let's go into some of the details about the new features that you'll find within the ATEM Mini Extreme. I'll talk about the ISO a little later. And the first thing I want to talk about is those two HDMI outputs on the back, because this is really powerful. I've mentioned it already. A lot of people were asking for two HDMI outputs because you always want a multi-view. But these two HDMI outputs actually are treated like aux buses, which means they're fully selectable about what goes on them. And here's my advice for you if you're getting an ATEM Mini Extreme. Use HDMI 2 for the multi-view, because HDMI 1 can actually be controlled from the front panel. There's a bunch of selection buttons which allow you to cut what is going on that or going out of that HDMI. So you can then use HDMI 1 to feed things like monitors and screens, and it's like having a switcher within a switcher, because you can plug in a monitor, and let's say you've got your PowerPoint presentation on input number 1, and then you've got some of your cameras on 2, 3, and 4. You can use those small little switcher controls on the right hand side and do a mix for your TV screen that is completely separate from your program output going to the live stream. So it's like having a switcher inside a switcher. Both of these HDMI outputs can be fully customized and controlled in terms of what does go out on them via the software, but it's HDMI 1 that you have the physical buttons for on the front of the device. Another addition that Blackmagic have made for the Extreme devices is not just one, but two Downstream keyers now. I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big user of the Downstream keyer, so to have two is nice. And the other thing I like about this is they've actually given or put a physical button on the front of the panel for DSK1, so you can now bring that on and off air with physical buttons as well. Following along with the pattern for physical buttons, we've also got 6 macro buttons. I'm a huge fan of this. I went crazy when I saw it on the live stream, but yeah, on the front of the panel, you've now got 6 programmable macro buttons. And if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know I'm a huge advocate for macros. You can do some incredibly powerful automation and sequences with macros. And now, with those programmable macro buttons on the front of the device, you now have an easy way of firing them so that you don't again have to dive into the software panel. Moving on as well to some more new features, because this device is packed with new features. Let's talk about DVEs, because there are now not just 1 but 2 DVEs built into the ATEM Mini Pro Extreme and the ISO model. And for those of you that don't know what the DVEs are, think of them as the sort of picture-in-picture. You'll see them a lot on news shows and things like that, where you've got a really nice stylized background, and then you've got a box for the 2 interviewers. And the ATEM Mini actually has presets for these and buttons for these presets. So at the touch of one button, you can bring on 2 boxes. So let's say you've got 2 guests talking to each other. Really nice, easy templates that Blackmagic have designed. And of course, again, they're fully customizable in terms of location and size within the ATEM software control as well. But they've made a nice preset button to get you started. But the ability to have 2 DVEs is really going to open up a lot of possibility for those that use the ATEM Mini for things like gaming, so that you can have, your game in a box plus your face cam feed in a box with a nice background, or even the game full screen and then 2 picture-in-pictures with each player's face cam. There's going to be a lot you can do with this, and it arguably brings me on to what I think is my favorite feature appearing in the Blackmagic ATEM Mini, and that is the ability or the enabling of SuperSource. If you don't know what SuperSource is, I've just talked about DVEs, and we've said that the Blackmagic has 2 DVEs, so imagine 2 picture-in-pictures. SuperSource essentially is 4 DVEs, so 4 picture-in-pictures with a background and a foreground layer as well. And you will see this all the time in news broadcasting, where you've got one person from Washington, one person from New York, all on screen at the same time talking to each other. This is what is being used. SuperSource allows you to have up to 4 separate feeds in the boxes, stylized however you like, on the screen wherever, cropped and sized to however you need it, and then create either a background for those or a foreground graphic so that they're all in these beautiful stylized boxes. We use this in our top of the line ATEM switchers every day as an incredible feature, and for Blackmagic to bring this into the Mini range, quite frankly, is outstanding. I'm going to have a video coming on my channel completely about SuperSource because I could talk about it, as you can tell, for hours. But what I want to do is create a video giving you some ideas, showing you how to set it up, how to use it, and how you can really make the most of it. So again, if you're not subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, because a video on SuperSource will be coming on my channel very soon. But let's keep going with the new features because there are a lot in this Blackmagic ATEM Mini Extreme. And I want to talk for a second about the new Select bus. As Grant said, a lot of the bigger, more professional, although I don't like to say that the ATEM Mini isn't professional now with what they've come out with, but the higher grade lines of the ATEM Minis all have a Select bus. And essentially what this is, it's kind of internal routing in the same way that you might invest in a Blackmagic video hub for routing video around everywhere. This is sort of routing inside of the ATEM Mini. And so what it allows you to do is, whereas before, let's say you wanted to change the source that was going in your picture-in-picture into DVE, you had no physical buttons to do that. You had to physically go into the ATEM software control and choose the camera source from, let's say, camera 1 over to camera 4. Now, this Select bus allows you to do that with any of the internal processing that is going on in the ATEM Mini. So what you do is you select your destination on the bottom row, and then you select what you want to go into that destination. So if we wanted to put, let's say, camera 1 on picture-in-picture number 1 or DVE 1, we would select DVE 1, and then we would be able to select from our select row which source we want to go in there, so we would hit camera 1. Now I want to talk about camera control for a second. I'm a big Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera lover, and I know a lot of people do pair the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera with the ATEM Minis, and you're going to love this new feature if that is you, because what they've done is they've actually added camera control again onto the front panel of the Blackmagic ATEM Mini Extreme. So you've got iris, gain, focus, black levels, and shutter, all being able to be controlled on the front panel using buttons. And my favorite out of all of these was focus. You basically have a section for each camera just above each cut button, the same place that you've got microphone levels for that camera. Just above that now you have your camera controls, and this will work with Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. And my favorite of all of these was focus, because I can really see this being used a lot. So not only can you shift the focus using the arrow buttons, but if you press and hold the focus button, it will trigger the in-camera autofocus so that you know you're always in focus. So in a situation like I'm in right now, where right now I'm only using one camera, but let's say I had 3 Blackmagic cameras to give a variety of different angles. Now all I have to do is sit down here, get my ATEM Mini Extreme, and on each camera I just press and hold the focus button, and I know it's auto-focusing on me. And I just press and hold it for camera 2, press and hold it for camera 3. I know they're all in focus. Now, a big thing we haven't talked about yet, but I think it's important to talk about, is the multi-view. More sources, you need to put them somewhere. And so what Blackmagic have actually done is taken the multi-view out of their top of the range switcher, the highest switcher they make, the 8K Constellation. They've taken the exact same multi-view that they use in there, and they put it into the ATEM Mini Extreme line. And it is a fantastic multi-view. You've got all the audio monitoring, the fact that you can completely customize the layout. And one thing that I love is you can actually have up to 16 feeds on screen. So you can have a grid of 4x4 on screen so that you can see all of your sources, all of the information that you want, but then you can go into the ATEM software control and can completely change what is in each square or how big each square is. So you don't have to have 16 on. You can have a big preview and a big program and then 8 sources on the bottom. It's fully customizable and it's a fantastic multi-view. And now it's on the ATEM Mini Extreme. Let's keep it going with new features then, because there are a lot, but we are coming to the end of the list, thankfully. 2 media players now, not just one. You've still got 20 stills store, and it is just stills. I personally would have quite liked to have seen, even if we can't do video yet, just some like image sequences for things like stingers. But on the ATEM Mini Extreme, it is just 20 still store, but 2 media players, which is really going to help if you are using things like SuperSource, but also want to SuperSource with a background or a foreground, but also want to have a logo on screen at the same time. You now have media players or 2 separate media players to be able to do that. The other thing, which I've saved kind of till last, but it's huge, and the fact that they put this in, again, what is their entry line switcher is amazing. The ATEM Mini Extreme now has 4 ATEM Advanced Chroma Keyers in that. And I am going to do a completely separate video on this, because I think this is so powerful to have 4 chroma keyers in this device. It essentially means that if you wanted to, you could now build a virtual set, a virtual studio. If you had a green screen, you can completely build a virtual studio with 4 cameras all having different angles and different backgrounds at the same time. And that's one of the videos that I really want to try and create and demo for you guys, how you can take yourself with a simple green screen and out of your environment, set up a few cameras, and have this virtual studio that isn't just for one camera, but as you cut to a different angle, let's say here, the background changes as well. So it looks like you're in this huge space, this kind of parallax effect. But yeah, you don't have to use it for virtual studios. I just think this is a really powerful use for it now that you've got 4 keyers within the ATEM Mini Pro. But you do have 4 keyers there, and you can use them for anything. So you've now got 4 of not just any chroma keyer, but the ATEM Advanced Chroma Keyer. And the final thing, just to finish off with this before we talk about the ISO model, is Grant showed that the ATEM Mini can actually be paired with things like the ATEM 1ME Advanced Control Panel or the ATEM Camera Control Unit. And really, when you do that, and I thought this was quite interesting, really when you pair it with those big broadcast sort of panels, you completely forget that you're using an ATEM Mini as the brains. You could quite easily sort of put the ATEM Mini under the table, out of the way, connect everything up using Ethernet, have a client come in, and they wouldn't know that you're using an ATEM Mini to power it all, versus using something like a broadcast 4K or a broadcast or an 8K Constellation, because there's so many features within this panel. The only thing that really sets it out as different is it's HDMI based. So then, if you've made it this far, you're going to want to know how much the thing costs. Well, it starts shipping now. You can get them now, and it's going to cost you $995. Yeah, I did say that right. I didn't say $9,995. And when I was doing the live stream, I asked people to put in the prediction of what they thought this thing would cost as the features were being announced, and we were seeing really minimums of $2,000, $3,000. No, you can buy this $995. That is an incredible price for the amount of features packed into this device, the amount of inputs that you get, the 2 HDMI outputs, the headphone monitoring, the 2 mic inputs, and don't forget you've also got the same Fairlight audio controls for every HDMI input as well. So you get the limiter, the 6-band EQ, everything. It's amazing how much you get audio-wise on this thing as well. All of the SuperSource, the 2 media players now, 2 DSKs, 4 Advanced Chroma Keyers, 2 DVEs, but basically 6 DVEs when you pair that up with the SuperSource, because that's basically 4 DVEs for the SuperSource. And I know there are definitely features, the 6 macro buttons, the camera control on the front, all of that and more, because I know there's ones I've missed, for $995. Mental. But that wasn't, don't go anywhere just yet, because that wasn't the only device that was announced. Blackmagic last year released the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. So of course, when they announced the ATEM Mini Extreme, there was going to be a calling out to have an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. So they just brought it out at the same time. And this is an incredible device. The ATEM Mini Extreme ISO gives you all of the features that I've already talked about for the ATEM Mini Extreme, but the ISO model also records all 8 inputs plus the program output, giving you a total of 9 streams or 9 recordings in total. And those 8 inputs are all at default recorded at HyperDeck High, and then it's the program output that is selectable for the quality. You just go into the live streaming tab, and whatever quality you have set in there is what will be used for the recording. So that basically means you can have up to 9 HyperDeck High recordings. So you are going to need a pretty fast SSD to manage all of that write speed. And it isn't, of course, just the 9 recordings. You've also got all of the individual WAV audio files being recorded at the same time. Plus, the big quality of the ISO model is the writing of the DaVinci file. So right after you hit stop recording on the ATEM Mini, you can take your SSD, plug it into your Mac and PC, and open up the DaVinci timeline where you've got all of the cuts that you did on the ATEM Mini while you were live. They're all there, laid out, perfectly timecode synced in your timeline, and then you can go and make small edits if you made mistakes while you were live, and then export that file, upload it to YouTube as a high-res version of your live stream. So that's one advantage of the ISO model. I'm a big lover of my ATEM Mini Pro ISO, so I'm definitely going to be looking to get the Extreme ISO because I use those ISO features all the time. Now, the other thing it also gives you, especially if you're a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera user, is the ISO model will also trigger the recording in all your Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. And of course, that recording can be in Blackmagic RAW, and if you've got the 6K, it can be up to 6K. So what that means is when you trigger all of your cameras to record using the ISO model, it records internally. You then take that Blackmagic RAW footage, drag it into the DaVinci file that the ISO has created for you, and it will basically swap out the 1080p files that the Blackmagic Extreme ISO has recorded for the Ultra HD files that the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera recorded. You don't have to sync anything or anything like that. It's all perfectly timecode synced. You just drag them in, replace those files, and so you can live vision mix a show using the ISO, and then bring in those Ultra HD files into DaVinci and export a Ultra HD version of what you just mixed using the ISO. So then you can upload that to YouTube or wherever. And the other benefit, now that you've got two USBs within the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, is that you can do all of that and at the same time bring a feed into your Mac and use it as a webcam on things like Zoom, Skype, or even just have it in QuickTime as a backup recording of the program output. So for all of those additional features, it's not actually that much money at all. The price of the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO is $1,295. Blackmagic did say that that will start being made into production this week, so it's about a week delayed from the Extreme model, so then we should start seeing them ship pretty soon. But that's going to be the one to get, the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, if you can afford it, because that's going to give you the most functionality and the most flexibility, definitely when it comes to post-production as well, if you want to have that workflow. So anyway, look, I just wanted to create this video, give you a very quick roundup of all of the features that you can expect from the ATEM Mini Extreme and the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. I, of course, as soon as I get one here, will be giving a hands-on video and showing you some of the things that I've been talking about today. I've already mentioned a few times some videos that I've got in mind that I want to create and will be coming to this channel soon. Another one that has been heavily requested is a workflow video, so showing you how I record my videos, also using that workflow of doing a stream on the ATEM Mini ISO, getting those files or that DaVinci file and all the Blackmagic RAW files into DaVinci, swapping it out and creating an Ultra HD timeline. I'm going to do a video on that hopefully as well. So lots of new videos to come. So if you're not subscribed, now is the time. Hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you know when each of those go out. But that's pretty much my roundup of the Blackmagic ATEM Mini Extreme and Extreme ISO announcements. I might do a separate video on the Web Presenter HD and possibly the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pro that was also announced at the same time. If you want to see those, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video or have any questions about any of the new features, any questions about the Extreme or the Extreme ISO, stick them in the chat below. I'll do my best to answer. If you want advice on your setup, I do offer one-to-one consulting sessions. The email address is on screen now. Pop me a message. We'll get that sorted for you. And hit the like button because apparently YouTube likes it when you do that. So I would really appreciate it if you did enjoy this video. Hit that like button. Once you've done all that, and I know it's a lot, I'll see you on the next one, guys.